In the summer of 1789, the most powerful kingdom in Europe began to tear itself apart. France, the France of Versailles, of gold and candlelight and a king who ruled by the grace of God, had run out of bread, run out of money, and run out of patience. And in the chaos that followed, almost no one noticed a thin, pale young officer from a small island in the Mediterranean. He spoke French with a foreign accent. He had no fortune, no famous name, no powerful friends. Within 6 years, he would be the most talked about soldier in Paris. Within 16, he would place a crown on his own head and call himself Emperor of the French. This is where that story begins, not with the crown, but with the cannon. Welcome back to History with Rohrmann. This is the first episode of a new series, Napoleon Rise and Fall. 5 episodes told in order, following one man from an unknown lieutenant to the master of a continent, and all the way down again. But to understand how he rose, we have to start with the world that made him possible. A France on fire, and an old Europe that had no idea what was coming. Let us set the stage. For centuries, Europe had run on a simple idea. Kings ruled because God had chosen them. Below the king sat the nobility and the church, who owned much of the land and paid almost none of the taxes. Everyone else, from wealthy merchants down to starving peasants, carried the weight on their backs. France was the largest, richest, and proudest of these kingdoms. Its court at Versailles was the envy of the world, and it was effectively bankrupt. Years of expensive wars, including helping the American colonists break away from Britain, had drained the treasury. Bad harvests sent the price of bread soaring, and in a world where ordinary families spent most of their income just on bread, that was the difference between life and starvation. King Louis XVI was not a cruel man, but he was indecisive and overwhelmed, and the machinery of his government was rotten. In May of 1789, desperate for money, he summoned a grand assembly that France had not called in 175 years, hoping it would approve new taxes. Instead, it lit the fuse. The common representatives refused to be ignored. They declared themselves a national assembly, the true voice of the people, and swore not to disband until France had a constitution. The king wavered. Rumors spread that he would crush them by force. And on the 14th of July, 1789, the people of Paris stormed a royal fortress and prison called the Bastille, searching for gunpowder and striking a blow against the king's authority. The Bastille fell. To the crowds in the street, it felt like the old world had cracked open. To the kings and queens of Europe watching from their palaces, it looked like a local riot that would soon be put down. They could not have been more wrong. Now, while France burned, where was the young man at the center of our story? He was not in Paris. He was a junior artillery officer, barely 20 years old, and his name was Napoleon Bonaparte. He had been born on the 15th of August, 1769, on the island of Corsica, in the town of Ajaccio. And the timing matters. Corsica had belonged to the Italian city of Genoa for centuries, and had only been handed over to France the year before he was born. So Napoleon entered the world as a brand new French subject, on an island that had just been conquered, in a family that was minor local nobility but far from rich. He grew up speaking a dialect of Italian. He learned French as a second language, and he never fully lost the accent. His father managed to win him a scholarship to military schools on the French mainland, and there the boy from Corsica was mocked for his accent, his poverty, and his strange foreign name. He responded by burying himself in books, in mathematics, in history, and above all in the art of war. He was clever, intense, and quietly furious at the world. He chose the artillery, the branch of the army that lived and died by mathematics, by angles and distances and the cold logic of where a cannonball would land. It was the perfect weapon for a mind like his. And here is the crucial point. Under the old monarchy, the top ranks of the army were reserved almost entirely for high nobility. A poor lieutenant from Corsica could expect to spend his whole life stuck near the bottom. The revolution was about to tear that ceiling away, because the revolution did not stay calm for long. At first, Many hoped France might become a peaceful constitutional monarchy, a king who shared power with an elected assembly. But trust collapsed on both sides. In 1791, the royal family tried to flee the country in secret and was caught near the border. After that, no one believed the king was loyal to the new France. Meanwhile, the monarchs of Europe grew alarmed. If the French could overthrow their king, what was to stop the idea from spreading? Austria and Prussia, two of the great powers, began to threaten France, demanding that the king's full authority be restored. In April of 1792, France struck first and declared war. This was the beginning of more than 20 years of almost continuous warfare, the wars that would define Napoleon's entire life. And at first, they went badly. The French armies were in chaos. Many of their noble officers had fled abroad, and enemy troops pushed toward Paris. Panic and fury took over the capital. The monarchy was finished. In September of 1792, France abolished the kingship altogether and declared itself a republic, a country with no king in a Europe full of kings. Then came the act that horrified every court on the continent. On the 21st of January, 1793, the republic put its former king, Louis XVI, on trial, found him guilty, and executed him on the guillotine in the center of Paris. The crowd dipped handkerchiefs in his blood. To the revolutionaries, it was the death of tyranny. To the kings and emperors of Europe, it was the murder of one of their own, and a threat to all of them. Within weeks, a great alliance formed against France. Britain, the Dutch Republic, Spain, Austria, Prussia, and others. Historians call it the First Coalition, the first of 7 such alliances that would form against revolutionary and Napoleonic France over the next 2 decades. Keep that word in mind, coalition. It is the heartbeat of this entire story. Again and again, the monarchies of Europe would band together against France, and again, this one man would try to break them apart. Now, the monarchies expected this to be easy. France was in chaos, its officer corps gutted by the flight of the nobility, its treasury empty. By every traditional measure, the Republic should have been crushed in a single campaign. Instead, France did something Europe had never seen. In the summer of 1793, the Republic declared what it called the Levée en masse, a mass call to arms. In principle, the entire nation was now at the service of the war. Young men were conscripted by the hundreds of thousands. Women, children, and the old were told to make uniforms, roll bandages, and forge weapons. France, a country of nearly 28 million people, could suddenly put far larger armies into the field than its rivals, and it could replace its losses again and again. This was a revolution in warfare itself, and it matters enormously for everything that follows. The kings of Europe fought with small, expensive professional armies that they could not easily replace. France now fought as a nation in arms with vast numbers of citizen soldiers who believed, or were told to believe, that they were defending their homeland and their freedom. These were the armies Napoleon would one day inherit. Huge, motivated, willing to march fast and far, and led increasingly by young officers promoted for talent rather than birth. The revolution did not just open a door for Napoleon's career. It built the very instrument he would use to conquer a continent. So picture France in 1793, surrounded by enemies on every border. Its king dead, its government radical and afraid. Inside the country, the revolution turned on itself in a wave of paranoia and bloodshed known as the Reign of Terror. Thousands were sent to the guillotine, not only nobles but ordinary people accused of disloyalty, and eventually the revolutionaries began executing each other. It was a dark, dangerous, and unforgiving time, but it was also a time when France desperately needed talent and did not much care where that talent came from. The old rules were gone. For an ambitious young officer with a gift for war, it was the opportunity of a lifetime. That opportunity arrived at a southern port city called Toulon. Toulon was France's great naval base on the Mediterranean. In 1793, its leading citizens, frightened of the revolution and the terror, did the unthinkable. They handed the city, and the French Mediterranean fleet anchored in its harbor, over to the British. For the young republic, this was a disaster. A major French port, full of warships, now occupied by the enemy. The revolution had to take it back or look helpless. A French army was sent to besiege Toulon, but it was getting nowhere. And then, almost by accident, the artillery commander was wounded, and a young captain was sent to replace him. That captain was Napoleon Bonaparte, and he was 24 years old. What he did at Toulon revealed the mind that would conquer Europe. While the generals argued about storming the city walls directly, Napoleon looked at a map of the harbor and saw the real answer. He did not need to take the whole city. He needed to take one key piece of high ground, a promontory that controlled the entrance to the harbor. Plant his cannon there, he argued, and he could pound the British and Allied fleet until it was forced to flee. And if the fleet fled, the city could not hold. It was a classic Napoleon insight: find the one decisive point, concentrate your force there, and ignore everything else. He gathered guns from across the region, drilled his crews relentlessly, and built his batteries under fire. In December of 1793, the French stormed that crucial high ground in a brutal night assault, with Napoleon in the thick of it. He was wounded in the leg by a bayonet, but the position was taken. His cannon went to work, and just as he had predicted, the enemy fleet had no choice but to abandon the harbor. Toulon fell. It is worth pausing on how he won because the method never really changed. Most commanders of the age thought in terms of fortresses, supply lines, and careful maneuver, an almost ceremonial chess game where great battles were often avoided. Napoleon thought in terms of the knockout blow. He studied the ground until he found the one point where a decision could be forced. Then he gathered every gun and every man he could and hammered that point without mercy. Speed and concentration were everything. At Toulon, that instinct, paired with the cold mathematics of the artillery, turned a stalled siege into a clean victory in a matter of weeks. The generals above him had seen a city to be stormed. He had seen a harbor to be made impossible. That difference in vision is, in a single word, why we still talk about him. The victory made his name. At 24, he was promoted to brigadier general, a rank he could never have dreamed of under the old monarchy. The revolution, for all its terror and bloodshed, had just handed a general's stars to a poor outsider from Corsica, purely because he had won. This is one of the great themes of Napoleon's rise. He was a child of the revolution. Its chaos destroyed the old world of privilege, and into that gap stepped men of raw talent who would never have been allowed to climb so high before. He was the most spectacular of them all. But the revolution was a dangerous patron, and it could turn on its favorites in an instant. In the summer of 1794, the leaders of the terror finally fell. On the 27th of July, the man most associated with the bloodshed, Maximilien Robespierre, was himself overthrown and sent to the guillotine the next day. It was a violent lurch back towards something calmer, but it nearly took Napoleon down with it. He had been linked to the fallen radicals, and for a brief, frightening period he was placed under arrest, his career hanging by a thread. He was soon released, but the message was clear. In revolutionary France, you could go from hero to suspect overnight. The next year, 1795, found him in Paris, out of favor, short of money, unsure of his future, a general without an army. He even thought about leaving to offer his services to the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire. It is one of history's strange near misses. The man who would dominate Europe almost drifted off into obscurity. And then the streets of Paris saved him. By the autumn of 1795, the revolution had calmed enough to write a new constitution, run by a five-man committee called the Directory. But not everyone wanted it. On the 5th of October, 1795, thousands of armed protesters, many of them royalists who wanted the monarchy back, marched on the national government in the heart of Paris. The revolutionary leaders were cornered and outnumbered, and they turned in desperation to the one soldier nearby who they knew would not hesitate: Napoleon. His response was ruthless and effective. He sent a young cavalry officer racing across the city to seize cannon before the mob could. He placed those guns at the key streets and approaches guarding the government, and when the crowd surged forward, he did something that generals of the old order would have shrunk from. He fired artillery, point blank, into a crowd in the streets of Paris. The blasts of grapeshot, clouds of small iron balls, tore through the attackers. Hundreds were killed or wounded in minutes, and the rising collapsed. A British observer would later call it the whiff of grapeshot, and the phrase stuck. It is a moment that captures something cold and permanent about Napoleon. He saw a problem, he calculated the solution, and he carried it out without flinching, whatever the human cost. In that single afternoon, an out-of-favor general became the savior of the Republic. The government that he had just rescued rewarded him richly. He was promoted, celebrated, and given command. He moved in the highest circles now, and soon he married a fashionable and well-connected widow named Josephine, who opened doors across Paris. The thin outsider from Corsica was an outsider no longer. So let us take stock of where we stand at the end of 1795. In just 6 years, France has destroyed its monarchy, executed its king, declared a republic, survived the terror, and made war on nearly all of Europe. And a young artillery officer who began the revolution as an unknown lieutenant has ended it as one of the most promising generals in France, a man the government now owes its survival to. He has learned the lessons that will carry him to the top. Find the decisive point, concentrate your force, strike fast and never flinch. The European monarchies still see the French Revolution as a fire that will eventually burn itself out. They do not yet understand that the fire is about to find a commander. Because the Directory, grateful but also nervous about this ambitious young general in their capital, was about to give him a job far away, a worn-out, underfunded army on the southern border, with orders to march into Italy and fight the mighty Austrian Empire. It looked like a backwater command, almost a way to get him out of Paris. Instead, it would become the campaign that turned Napoleon Bonaparte from a promising general into a living legend. And that is where our next episode begins. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in episode 2.